I'm Bob Isaacson, and I'm the one of the 4 co-founders, along with Patty and Kim and David Beck. Now it's over 11 years, like 11 years and a few months ago, in 2011, we started DVA, thinking it would be like a California organization. Now, we thought the point was to have an organization so we could talk about eating animals and eating animal products with centers, Dharma centers, and also with teachers. And we were getting nowhere fast. David and I were doing this, and another friend of ours, Ari, was doing this kind of independently. And then none of us were getting very far doing that. We realized we needed an organization, so we created DVA. And then DVA, sales 2011. By 2012 or 13, we realized we needed to go to where the Buddhists were, which is Asia. So I did my first trip out there 2014. And then we created these 3 projects that a lot of you know about. Stephanie, you know about this. We've been talking about it. One in Thailand. I just got back from 4 weeks in Thailand. Project is going amazingly well. We're giving access to the most important watts and trying to transition the monks, the 300,000 monks, to plant-based diet. We'll probably never get them fully there, but what they say and what they do and their habits around food influence greatly the 65 million Buddhists in the country. So that's our plan. And we're using health. We'll talk about everything, but we'll start with compassion when Stephanie and I start talking. And then, as I do every time, I'm going to give you like 2-minute updates. That's on Thailand. Vietnam is finally coming out of a really severe lockdown, so we made a little bit of a change. Not at the top. Top is one of the top monks in the country, Venerable Thich Tan Huan. So he's still our director, but most of the work is done by Swann. She was my interpreter translator. Now she's the assistant director, and that'll get back going. We're going back into the pagodas that were shut down for a long time, and Sri Lanka is in terrible domestic shape. There's all kinds of unrest and violence on the streets and no gas lines. It took our director 21 hours to fill up with gas the other day. He had to wait in her car. It's dangerous and just bad situation. And there's 100% inflation in the country. That's not good either. So we're trying to take care of as best we can our people. We have 15 people on payroll in Sri Lanka. And then U.S. I'm so excited about this. Carrie Thompson started our U.S. project. We hired her to be the director of U.S. operations, and that was back in December of last year. And Carrie's getting going, and Stephanie here, and I'm going to lead in now. I think I'm just going to introduce Stephanie and use this to lead into my introduction, and then we'll start our conversation. So Stephanie is on our letter. We have a letter of 7 people. 5 teachers, well-known teachers, including Stephanie, and then Carrie and myself, including Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, who you might know as the nun who spent 12 years meditating in a cave, in a book written about her cave in the snow. So she's really, really, really supportive. She's on our letter, and will, when the situation is right, she will try to contact and influence and suggest and encourage U.S. centers and centers elsewhere to transition to plant-based servings, to serve plant-based food. So let's see. Let's talk about, Stephanie, let's talk about you. I want to introduce you, and then we can start our conversation. So right now, Stephanie is by the way, this is our 7th episode. Charles is on too. Charles is our communications director, and I'm almost sure we're streaming this on Facebook. But in any event, this is number 7, and Stephanie is currently the director of the Atlanta Mindfulness Institute. She's also one of 2 founding teachers of the Atlanta Insight Meditation Community. She's a certified MBSR instructor, mindfulness-based stress reduction instructor, and she did her training through the University of Massachusetts School of Medicine. Center for Mindfulness. And as she's also a consultant, and she trains in her role as consulting, she trains mental health professionals in the practice of mindfulness-based psychotherapy. Currently, Stephanie holds an adjunct faculty appointment with the Georgia State University School of Social Work, where she works as a NIH grant. She's working on an NIH grant. It's always good to get those. And she's using mindfulness to support stopping smoking, cessation of smoking. She's been a vegetarian since her early 20s and now is fully committed to a vegan way of life. And Stephanie has been like so supportive of DVA. We actually just met, I think, about a year ago or so. And I would be remiss not mentioning that she's also on our advisory, Stephanie's on our advisory council. There's only 11 people around the world who are on our council. And we use our council not only to put forth a good foot out there in the world, but also to consult with, to help us, to brainstorm, and that's kind of what we're doing now. I'm going to learn, I'm sure, a lot from this conversation. I hope you will too. So with that, Stephanie, it's such a pleasure to be talking with you today.
It's good to be talking with you, Bob.
Yeah, thanks. So let's see where we can start. I mentioned that you're one of the two co-founding teachers at, I guess it's at Atlanta Insight Meditation Community. Could you tell us about that? And then, yeah, tell us about that. I had a couple other questions, which I couldn't wait.
Yeah. Well, the Atlanta Insight Meditation Community is a thriving Sangha. I'm happy to say it's a really lovely group of people. We have about, I believe now about 95 members, and right now we're still Zoom based. So I can't say everyone's from Atlanta anymore. We have people from North Carolina and South Carolina and other parts of Georgia joining us. So it's really, it's a rich space, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but one of the more exciting pieces of our Sangha development has been we have, in the last 6 months, started a compassionate eating group. It's called Compassion, The Great Compassion, after Norm Phelps' book, The Great Compassion, a Plant-Based Living Group. And so we'll talk some about that, I'm sure, but that's just been so dear to my heart and such an important development. And it really came out of my connection with you and DVA. And finally, it feels like after 16 years of being part of insight communities and retreating in this country, finally finding a group where it made sense to me that compassion didn't stop at mealtime. And so as you and I have connected, and as I've connected with the greater DVA community, it really was the supporting fact that finally I went, okay, let's do this. Let's create this Sangha group, which now is becoming larger than the Sangha. Not larger in numbers, but we're inviting people outside of the Sangha. But it's a lovely community, and I'm grateful for it.
And you're from Atlanta. Were you born and raised in Atlanta?
I wasn't. I was born and raised in Athens, Georgia,
Uh,
and then moved to the Northeast. I did some schooling in the Northeast and lived in Massachusetts for a while. Um, but as you will hear many Southerners from the South, from the Southern U.S. say, I have a love-hate relationship with this place. I can't seem to leave it. Um, and there's a lot of work to be done here, in the vein of compassion, actually.
yeah.
So yes, so I find myself back in Atlanta, and have been here for 30 years now. Well, yeah, 30 years now.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I really like that that I like about you being Atlanta based is In DVA, we have very few people in the South or the Deep South, as it's called in the North. It's probably not called in the South. The Deep South. This is really good. It's really great. It's a bridge, and then there is also the Southern Dharma Center. Is that where your folks do retreats? Like when you're bringing, I don't know.
It isn't. Southern Dharma has changed their model some in the past. Well, I guess it's probably been 10 years now. Time flies. But they changed their model. They used to have weekends where sanghas could bring up their folks and have basically a sangha-based retreat. They don't do that so much anymore. So when we retreat as a sangha, we typically go to independent retreat centers, not necessarily Buddhist retreat centers, but certainly retreat centers that will support the way we practice. For example, we're just planning our next retreat, and we will be at a place called the Mountain in North Carolina, and it's actually a Unitarian uh,
Oh,
sponsored retreat center, and they are going to be having all vegan meals for us. So it's important, and we're committed as our advisory council, as part of our sangha. We are committed to finding retreat centers that will support uh, compassion in its fullest. So I'm excited about that, and
that's
that's
great.
great. That moves out of the Buddhist world into the larger world. But
Yeah, that's great. And most of my retreating has been either Spirit Rock or IMS Force Refuge, but I've been to different places. It's kind of interesting. And then when we started talking about starting DVA, I'm always like looking at the food, of course, that's being served, which we're going to talk about. I want to talk about food a little bit. Because I mean, that's what DVA is, right? We're the only international Buddhist animal advocacy, or we could say animal rights organization in the whole world. And we've been around, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, for over 11 years now. So when we like have a big responsibility to do this, and you're integral part of our organization. Being on our U.S. centers letter and our video. We also have a video that we created for U.S. centers, again urging them to transition to plant based. That's our message. So I want to just ask you about yourself. I know that you self-identify as a vegan Dharma teacher. Um, why did you change? Tell us about your journey, if you will.
mm, well, I think I changed because that's what I find this path to be, a heart-changing path. I mean, the deeper and the longer uh, I sit, the more my heart opens to all beings. And I certainly became a vegetarian before I became a Buddhist. Um, and I talked a little bit about this in the Dharma talk that I gave recently on a compassionate diet for a planet in crisis. But I grew up loving animals. I mean, that's the story in my family. Stephanie loves animals. Sometimes the story is Stephanie loves animals more than people, but I always have had animals around me. But I also grew up eating what we call steak, what we call hamburger. And some of my most cherished memories with my father, who I lost when I was 20, he passed away when I was 20. Some of my most cherished moments are of grilling out and cooking. And, Bob, I'm not actually sure what woke me up in my very early 20s. It was probably I was 21 years old. But something woke me up, and I recognized this severe discrepancy between genuinely my love for all animals, uh, and this practice. And so, as many people's story goes, I do not think mine's unique by any stretch. But I started investigating, and I love thinking about the Buddha's 7 factors of awakening. The first 2 factors are mindfulness and investigation. To begin to really be aware, what is this? Just that fundamental question of what is this? Or who is this on my plate? And I asked that. I don't know why I asked it, but I asked it. And as I began to investigate with the help of Peter Singer and some good folks that had written some pretty intense accounts, I made a pact pretty quickly that I was done. How could I do that? And I began to, and I remember this as a young 20-year-old. I had a dog, her name was Magnolia. And I remember starting to not be able to differentiate between Magnolia and cows that I would see, because I live in this, we have a lot of cows around, especially out in rural Athens. And it didn't make any sense to me anymore. It was like, this doesn't, it was nonsensical and it was painful. So I stopped eating pork and beef, and but I didn't stop eating chicken. You know, it's incredible to me, the human psyche, and the human psyche. Even though I've been a psychotherapist for 30 years, the human psyche that I've investigated the most is my own, and it's stunning to me, the defense mechanisms that we have that allow us to feel such compassion for one breathing being and absolutely shut down to another one. And I saw that. And but as the universe provided for me, I entered social work school. I entered a master's program in social work when I was probably 23. And at that time, I had to drive on the rural back roads to get from Atlanta to Athens, but I'd moved to Atlanta. And that's where they hide the processing plants. That's where they hide the slaughterhouses. And so every day I would drive there for 2 years back and forth, and I would see the chicken plants. And I mean, there were many days that I saw those chickens crammed in those trucks, bleeding. And I still see it to this day, and it takes my breath every time. And it's painful. And that was my waking up process about, fowl, about chickens, about turkeys. But still, I wasn't done. There were fish kind of got a break from me because I wasn't crazy about fish. So that was relatively easy to give up because the pleasure centers weren't being gratified. But the animal products were difficult. And I'm sad to say, not ashamed, not just sad to say, that took many more years for me to give up eggs and cheese and ice cream and all the things that touch those pleasure centers that I learned that, I was conditioned to enjoy. But thank goodness for another advisory council member, Tara Brock. She gave a beautiful Dharma talk in which she really talked about her own coming to terms with especially eggs. And all it took was me hearing that male chicks are crushed alive because humans have no use for them. That my heart broke again. And what I've found on this Buddhist path of heart opening is actually my heart tends to need to break first before it opens. And that happened. And some denial actually was broken through too, Bob, because I have friends that have chicks, that's where we would get our eggs. I've also learned to confront my own self-righteousness, which is sort of laughable sometimes. But I would, in my human naivete, I would say, well, I don't get eggs from the store. I just get eggs from my friends. And then I heard Tara say, well, even if you have chickens at your house, you had to buy those chickens from somebody. And whoever you bought them from provided you with female chickens. And we didn't dawn on you what happened to the males. So that was it for me. That was, and again, I think that the two first factors of the factors of awakening, mindfulness and investigation, that that is what I try to lead as best I can. Try to lead my life with those two qualities, mindfulness and investigation.
Hmm.
So, and it's important also to say that, of course, living a compassionate life doesn't stop at our plate. It's what we put on our shoes, what we put on our feet. It's what covers our car seats. It's so ubiquitous in our world how animals are used. So I'm always constantly still growing. How wool is made. And it isn't that bucolic farm where the sheep are grazing and we're doing them a favor by shearing them. That's not where our wool comes from. So again, I think as this journey has unfolded for me, mindfulness and investigation are the key components to this Buddhist practice. And always, as best I can, informed by compassion.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what am
yeah,
I
no,
doing?
thank you for that. Really appreciate what you said and speaking from your heart. You mentioned two books. I believe you mentioned a book by Peter Singer. Was it Animal Liberation? Yeah, that's what changed me to vegetarian. I took the same path. I was vegetarian for quite a while, and I'm vegan for the past 18 years now. And then the other one was Norm Phelps, The Great Compassion. So I don't think we have. I don't know if we have Peter Singer's book on, but it's easy to find. Peter Singer, Animal Liberation. He's a philosopher. Last I saw, he's Australian, but last I actually met him at an AR conference. I was, oh wow, you're really Peter Singer. I was like so happy to meet. I wanted to autograph something, but I didn't have anything for him to autograph. Maybe he's at Princeton, maybe he's not, but he's doing some other great work, and he's on panels all the time. And Norm Phelps was actually a good friend of mine, one of my mentors, who would have been on our original DVA's original board, but he was really ill back then, died not long after. And The Great Compassion is, in my view, the best book, certainly the best book I've read about eating animals and animal products and Buddhism. It's The Great Compassion, colon, um, some animal rights and Buddhist ethics or something like
I
that. I
think
mean,
it's just animal rights and
and,
Buddhism.
and Buddhism.
Mhm.
That's it. And this was right at the heart. Norm was a practitioner in Tibetan tradition, and two great books. I also want to mention the talk that you gave, which was, I don't remember when, it was the end of last year, beginning of this year.
Yeah, I think it was the end of last
End
year.
of last year, and we have a link to it. I believe it's on our. I believe it's when you sign up, it's on the page. But also, if you go to our website, yeah, you can find it. And you know what we'll do is we'll make it available on Facebook. So we have a pretty active social media set of platforms around Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So there, and I highly recommend Stephanie's talk to anyone listening and sharing it with other people. It just really touched me. It moved my heart, but it's also like incredibly persuasive. This is the kind of things that change people. And I hope our film, we have a film too, and I know you know about Animals and the Buddha by Keegan Kuhn. Back 2012, he produced that. That's on YouTube. Uh, uh, well over 1 million people have seen it worldwide. Don't be fooled by the 160 some thousand. Usually it's shown. I've showed it in front of sanghas in South Korea, temples in Sri Lanka, where you can get up to 400 or 500 people watching it at one time. So I'm sure millions of people have seen it now around the world, translated into 12 languages. So I want to ask you some more about this. So maybe we could shift from your personal story and maybe other people are thinking about their personal story as you were talking, to the kind of Buddhism in the West, or Buddhism in the U.S., or Dharma practice, if some people prefer that. And so there's so many Western Dharma teachers or Dhamma teachers that eat animals. They're not vegetarian, let alone vegan. So what can we do? What can an organization like DVA do? What can individuals, DVA folks or not, do to encourage people using the Buddhist teachings as a background to transition? I say transition because most people don't just change in a moment. It takes a while for the heart and mind to change. What 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 can be done about that? Be done about that as an organization or as individuals? What do you think?
Hmm. Well, first, I agree with you that our conditioning is so strong. And, I am a huge fan and I so appreciate Melanie Joy's work on carnism and understanding that we were born into this belief system, just as we were born into patriarchy, just as we were born into racism. This is a system we're born into, and just this is incredible. But I went to my own doctor in the last 6 months, and this is a woman who has an MD, a PhD in public health. I mean, she's incredibly informed. And I had lost some weight recently. And one of the things that changed about my diet is I have taken out processed foods. So that not only am I plant-based, but I'm whole food based. And, so she was asking me about it, and she'd taken some blood work, and I told her, and she said, "Be careful, Stephanie. You probably are not getting enough protein." And I just couldn't believe it, except I so understand now. This is our conditioning. Our medicine is carnistic medicine. They Doctors are people, and we're all born into this belief, this myth that we must eat animals. So I want to reiterate to you and to anybody that's listening, although probably the choir is here, but that this does take time to change. I wish it didn't for the sake of the animals, but it does because of our deep conditioning. And so just the fact that we begin to pay attention and begin to bring mindfulness, bring investigation here is making a difference. We have people in our plant-based group who are not fully vegan, but they're waking up and investigating, and they're changing. So to answer your question, I mean, I just want to preface with that what we are battling, and I'm not crazy about that word, but what we're battling is human conditioning, because whoever's a Buddhist is also a human. And if you were raised in the West, and I'll just speak from the West, you were raised in a carnistic system. So we have to undo that. And that's why I promote Melanie Joy's TED Talk. It is a fantastic TED Talk and will help you understand why it is so hard for you to stop eating meat when you see yourself as a very compassionate, loving person, like how these two things can fit together. But I think we've got to start having conversation, Bob. Like, I said in my own Dharma talk, first of all, the fact that I gave a Dharma talk on compassionate eating, like, why isn't that just peppered into all of my talks, right? I mean, even as teachers, no one says don't talk about it. You just know you don't talk about it. And that has to stop. We have to support each other in that can be talked about right alongside patriarchy, right alongside the elimination of Roe versus Wade, right alongside the racism that exists. This is another system that is so destructive. So we have to start talking about it. We have to be willing to engage. And I think that's so important. I was thinking about our talk today, and I was just kind of letting my mind wander. And I thought, this week, I'm going to create a survey that's going to go out to at least our Sangha to begin with. And I want to ask, are you plant-based? Are you pescatarian? I want to know, what's your eating patterns? And then I want to ask, would you, if you're going on a retreat, would you be willing to go to a retreat center that feeds you vegan food, only vegan food? Yes, yes or no? Yes, I'd be more likely to go. Doesn't matter. No way, I'm not going. And because I think our retreat centers have this belief that if they transition from a vegetarian diet to a vegan diet, no one's going to come. And I can't believe that's true. I think people want to be more compassionate. They're just struggling with their intense conditioning. And to take a break from meat eating or take a break from animal products for 7 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, I just don't think people will mind that. Maybe they would even welcome that. Maybe it would be a way to explore and experiment with what is it like to eat a plant-based diet. And I don't have to cook it. I don't have to figure out because I hear people say all the time, I don't know how to cook like that. I know how to throw a chicken breast in a skillet, but I don't know how, that's too hard for me to cook. Go to a retreat center and get someone to cook for you. How lucky is that? So I really want to discover this because I hear this myth that we can't do that. We can't go to a vegan. Nobody will come. I'm not sure I believe that's true, but I want to find out. I want to find out, at least in a small sample.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? I don't think so. So one, I think we've got to keep busting myths that people won't participate in this temporarily. Two, I think we've got to start talking about it. Three, I think Dharma teachers need to not have to have one talk on compassionate eating. I want to be able to talk about it whenever.
Yeah.
But it's tricky because in a carnistic system, you get known as the crazy vegan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the ways that we hold tight to our carnistic framework. Crazy vegan. Why? Meat eaters talk about going to eat barbecue all the time, talk about how delicious it is, talk about. So we have to start really penetrating this belief system that is basically invisible.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think with everything you said, and just starting with the talking about it. So I mean, that was the major motivation for starting DVA. So we want to encourage people to talk about it. Sometimes just asking the question. You know, if you're at a teacher meeting or even at a retreat, just ask the question. I noticed that this was served, and as a you're vegetarian or vegan, if it's not vegetarian, or if you're vegan, it's not vegan. You just says wondering about that. Is there ever discussion about the consequences of serving? Many centers are serving animal flesh or serving milk or butter in other centers. So I think so. This is really important, and I really like what you said about the one talk. So why should anybody be limited like yourself to one talk? But most teachers never talk about it. And I sat there. So I've been going on retreats since '98. So it's been 24 years. And I tend to go on month or longer retreats now. And I count the number of times that teachers refer to having fish and chips for lunch or dinner, or even hamburgers. And only one teacher that I know, because I've been encouraging him to do it, ever mentions vegetarian or vegan food, having gone out or going to Pauk Sayadaw's retreat center in Burma when it was possible to do that, it was safe to do that, and having they called vegetarian, but it was actually, I think it's actually vegan, but it's really easy to be vegan there. And then just one compared to hundreds of teachers talking about their eating their hamburgers and fish and chips and things like that. So I mean, even just to balance it, to show the identification that you don't have to be eating animals to be a Dharma teacher. In fact, it's a good idea to take a look at the teachings. May not want to be. We have to talk about it, and it's hard to do it because it's people were marginalized. Right? I might even have trouble in my sign. So I'm a CDL person also, and I've been teaching here for 15, 18 years, I think. And so a lot of people don't want to. I've lost people in my sign just by talking about it. And then okay, that's all right. So we'll talk about it and try to find a way to talk about it that's not judgmental, because we don't do the animals any good when we're pounding the table and judging people, and this is terrible that you're doing it. I mean, that doesn't help the animals. It's just self-centered. So we have to find a way to talk about it. It's not easy, but we can play a talk. Some people out here that are thinking how to talk about. Play Stephanie's talk. And I see Charles sent everyone could see this in the chat. There's a link there. It's posted on SoundCloud.com. That's developing a compassionate diet for a planet in crisis, and that's the talk that I was talking about, and you can get it just by using that link. So let me see if there's anything else. Oh, also there's a Daniel McDonald dropped the link to Melanie Joy. So Melanie, because you mentioned Melanie Joy, and also Melanie Joy was interviewed by Jasmine with our Germany chapter, and Jasmine interviewed her and posted on YouTube. It's pretty. I think there's several interviews,
it's fantastic.
several hours. Yeah. So it's really good, and yeah. So she's in our same community. Although I don't know her personally. Patty knows her really well, and he had introduced us a while ago. But the book is her books are great, and her way of looking at carnism. She talks about how that is and why that is. But it's inspiring to read somebody like this. She lives in Germany now.
Can I say something about that,
Sure, of
Bob?
course.
So, and I think this is an important part of the conversation, because talking about carnism, understanding carnism, because what it does is it takes people individually off the hook. I think what happens is, when we're talking about this, guilt and shame are so quickly activated for people. And then, I mean, we have this human brain, and as soon as there is distress in the human organism, we have defense mechanisms that immediately kick in to protect us. But so they start protecting themselves, or we start protecting ourselves from the ideas that are being talked about. So, like, don't talk to me about that. Now you're being crazy, Bob. Don't talk about that crazy stuff, right? So when we understand that we were all born into this system, that when we understand it as cultural conditioning, there's some spaciousness that opens up to provide more of an opportunity for dialogue. And I'll give you a case in point. So we have here, so I actually, since the pandemic, have moved up to North Georgia. I'm in Atlanta today, but I live up near Springer Mountain. Springer Mountain is the beginning of the Appalachian Trail. It's gorgeous, old mountains. The Southern Appalachians are some of the oldest mountains around. And so it's this beautiful bucolic place. Well, we have something known as Springer Farms chicken. Okay. So it ostensibly is this sweet, small farm where chickens run free, and they live a happy life. And then we don't really talk about how they die, but it's really good. And you go to any restaurant around here, high-end restaurant in Atlanta, and they'll say, we serve Springer Mountain Farm chicken. And you're like, oh, great, I can eat that. That's great because that's compassionate. Well, Wyatt Williams is an investigative journalist who got really interested. He worked for the AJC, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and he got really interested in, like, what is this Springer Farms chicken that everybody brags about and says, this is how you can feel good about eating meat, eat up. So he started investigating it. And he actually wrote a book now. It's a challenging book to read for me as somebody who doesn't eat animals, but it's called Springer Farms Meditations on Killing and something else. Anyway, he did a piece for the Sun magazine, and it's called The Carnivore's Dilemma. What he found was this Springer Farms chicken actually doesn't exist. It's Fieldale Farms, one of the largest conglomerates around. And literally what they do is they package chicken in 3 different places. One is Springer Mountain Farms, and that goes to high-end restaurants. The middle one goes to Kroger's and Publix and all that, and the lower end goes to Walmart. It's all the same chicken. They're all 250,000 of them crammed in there, slaughtered the same way, and packaged differently. And so he did this whole expose on it.
Wow.
And I think when we can uncover blatant lies like this, it helps people see that we're all in this. We've all been duped in many ways. And then there is an opening to begin to talk about, I don't want to live like this. I will never forget, I run a volunteer organization now up in LJ, and I sometimes, it's at a shelter, at an animal shelter. And so I get up very early in the morning and I have to drive by one of the chicken farms, and there's about 8 houses. And I was driving by about 6:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden I see this huge tractor coming out with a basket on the front. And I thought, oh my God, he just brought out hundreds of dead chickens, until I realized they weren't dead. That's how they go in and get them out to put them in the truck for transport. They just go in with a huge, huge tractor bucket and scoop them up. And I'm sure some die, some get harmed. And I just thought, and it was 6:30 and it was pitch black dark. This is how we don't see, we don't hear, we don't know. And that has to be part of the conversation. Not just, it's your responsibility to stop eating this, and why can't you do that? Well, because you've been duped. So I
Yeah,
just think that's
yeah. Well, this powerful story. I'm not shocked, I have to say, but uncovering all the lies behind the meat and dairy industry is
it's
really important.
incredible.
Really
And it's
important.
incredible that they can just do that.
Yeah,
And there's no
yeah, like
there's no accountability. There's no consequence.
exactly, no consequence. Yeah. Yeah, that's the sad part. The good part is that we can bring this to the attention of others. With your help, and just when you give a talk like the one you did, which I just sent the link out, which I highly recommend that people listen to, and it's been on our website, and also we posted it on Facebook page, probably on our Instagram page, also Instagram page. But in any event. This is the way we do it. We do it one conversation at a time. And then what we try to do, and you know about this because this is our U.S. Centers project that Carrie is director of, and we're starting to get some results, but mostly working with the vegetarian centers that we're starting to introduce and have available and make available vegan food. They're starting to move more in that direction. We still haven't had any traction for different reasons with the centers that are serving animal flesh. So, but we do that, and the reason we're focusing, I was going to say the reason we're centering on the centers, the reason we're focusing on the centers is because we can get the biggest result there. We talk to the centers, and maybe we'll influence some of those teachers just by these conversations to not talk about the hamburger that they had last night and on their way to their Dharma talk. And maybe we can lower that comfort level with identifying with teachers and people in power at these centers, the manager, the board of directors, the chairperson, etc., and lower their comfort level in identifying as a meat eater or someone that eats animal products at all. And to increase the identification or encourage people to identify as vegetarian, and much better yet, of course, as vegan. I've been vegan for 18 years, and that's the goal of DVA, as you know. So, yeah, so I mean, that's the reason we get to as many people as possible. So if I asked you a similar question, would you have the same answer or maybe different? So the similar question is, so many Buddhists, Dharma practitioners, I could never guess the percentage of Buddhists in the world. And so we're working with the number somewhere between 600 million and 1 billion, depending on how many are in China. So it's obviously has not been comfortable for a long time for people to self-identify as Buddhists. In China, there's a period, 2014, 15, 16, the government was actually supporting Buddhist sanghas and institutions. I was in China at the time, and I don't know what it's like now. I'm really not sure. But that number could bring whatever's in China, if there's as many as 600 million, or as some people think there is, or maybe 1 billion Buddhists in the world. Huge number. The teaching of the Buddha is so strong. Do not harm a sentient being. Do not extend the circle of compassion to sentient beings. So we got a great message from the Buddha himself about this. And yet so few people, or such a large percentage, I'll put it this way, of people who are Buddhists self-identify or practice the Dharma, it's the way Westerners often refer to themselves, are eating animals and eating animal products. So what how do we reach them, and how do we can't tell them what to do, but how do we show them a path and model a path which leads to freedom of suffering for all sentient beings?
Oh, to be human.
Yeah.
You know,
It's an easy question, right?
Bob, we've mentioned Norm Phelps' book a couple of times, and he does such a beautiful job of speaking specifically to sutta, to the Mahayana tradition, to the Theravada tradition, to suttas, in both. And I realize what I'm about to say is very Western, is very psychotherapeutic, but we can use anything defensively to maintain the status quo. And I think we can use the suttas as defense of, I don't have to do this. The Buddha didn't say to do this. And I don't understand that, because I'm grateful that my teachers, my early teachers, really were teachers of compassion, that looked at what the core message of the Buddha was, which was non-harm, which was compassion, which was generosity. And so I don't get into doctrinal debate with people about this. Like, that's not, this is as Ajahn Chah said, this is a path of heart. This is a path of heart. And what I think is important to support people. There's three areas of harm that come when we eat animals. There's the harm to the animals, there's the harm to the planet, and then there's the harm to our own heart. And that's the part that we don't investigate, you know? And so I think the invitation is to pay attention to how it feels when you're chewing, when you're biting, when you're swallowing. Do you know what's happening right now? The Dhammapada, the verse of the Dhammapada that says, avoid doing what is harmful, cultivate the wholesome, purify the mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Clear. So, but in order to avoid doing what is harmful, we have to pay attention to how it feels. Not how it tastes, not the gratification of the pleasure centers, but how is it in the heart?
Yeah.
So I think there's an invitational quality to it, actually. It's not going to be one of us saying something that is so profound that it changes someone else. Not most of the time. Most of the time, I think it's going to be an invitation
Mm-hmm.
to get quieter, to get stiller, to get intimate with your own heart.
Yeah. Thanks for that answer. I really appreciate it. I want to just read a couple. There's a lot of comments, and we're not going to get to all of them, but we will to as many as we can. We may just go a few minutes over. So we got one here. Oh, yeah, okay. So Ray Sakura, hi to Ray. Stephanie, you are fabulous. So grateful that you are speaking these truths. I would like all the trustees at our centers to watch this. Thanks so much. So there's a lot of gratefulness expressed toward you and your role as a teacher in getting the word out. So I'm not going to read all of them. That's an example. Hi to Ray. We haven't met yet, but hi. I know about you and all the work you've done. Thank you. Let's see. Also, Charles also posted the link to the YouTube. You can all see it if you just click on chats or chat singular. The link to the interview with Melanie Joy, Sebastian Joy, in Germany. Let's see. And so not a lot of questions, but a lot of comments, which is good. Use the chat for whatever purpose you want. So let me ask you this. And I agree with what you said, that most of the time people are not being influenced. Even people who are, let's say, devout Buddhists, they really take to heart what the Buddha said and then try to apply it in their lives. Not so many people change because of a Dharma debate. And even though we have, our film Animals of the Buddha is to that point, we wanted to present the absolutely overwhelming case why Buddhists should stop eating animals and animal products. I mean, the case is overwhelming. So if you can find this on YouTube, Animals and the Buddha, or you go to our website on the homepage, you can just click into it. And please take a look. Keegan Kuhn is a really well-known documentary filmmaker. He's won lots of awards. He did 2 films with Leonardo DiCaprio. DiCaprio had a role as co-producer and things like that. One is called What the Health, which is all about the health benefits of plant-based diet. And the other is called Cow Conspiracy, about in the environmental impact and the hypocrisy in the environmental community around eating animals and animal products. And they're both are really, really good films. So, and I hope they have Keegan on sometimes too. He still talks to me. He still takes my phone calls. And he did our call. I mean, it was like total Donna. We paid him such a small amount, I'd be embarrassed to even say. He basically did this. He must have spent 1,000 hours on the film. So he's a lifetime buddy of DVA. So maybe we get Keegan on sometime, and he has a new film which maybe he can review with the co-director of the film, a guy by the name of John Lewis. So let's see. Well, I want to ask you. I got sidetracked looking at all the chats, but yeah, okay. So not so many people will be influenced by what the Dharma says, but there are some that will. And the thing that you and I have talked about this a little bit. Or maybe we just emailed about it. I think. So Buddhists will say those that follow the precepts, that follow karuna or compassion, that follow wise livelihood, where the line is not drawn at whether you actually kill an animal, but whether you are part of the process, like raising animals for slaughter. You can't do that, said the Buddha. But people still say, but and people who have Dharma in their hearts, they still say, I'm not violating the precepts. I'm not violating anything the Buddha taught, nothing in the Dharma, because I'm not actually killing the animal. What should we say to that? What do you say to
Respectfully, that's nonsense.
that?
I don't know if I can be respectful at the same time of saying that's nonsense, but I go back to underneath being a Dharma practitioner, you were born as a human being, and we have the capacity for defense mechanisms and to rationalize anything to protect what we're doing. And that just, I mean, we didn't have an animal agricultural industry when the Buddha was here. Of course, if you eat an animal, if you buy an animal, if you buy a piece of an animal and then you eat it, you have with your dollars said, kill more. You may not be killing it for yourself, you're killing it for the next person, but you are a part of the economic system that keeps the industry going. And that's why I say, I it is not my choice to get into those kind of debates, because if someone is saying that, then what they're saying is I'm not interested
Yeah.
in opening my heart right now. Maybe I will be in the future, but right now what I'm telling you is I'm not interested in opening my heart in this way. And there's not much dialogue that can happen there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I could come back with the sutta where the Buddha's teaching the young monk and he says, no meat, but
Yeah.
it's,
And wise livelihood. He didn't say to the cattle farmers that send the cattle to slaughter that you should not raise, according to his specific prohibitions in wise livelihood, shouldn't raise animals for slaughter. So that the line he doesn't. The Buddha never drew the line at actually killing. And then also all over the Dhammapada and everywhere else they talk about killing or causing to kill. When you're buying the food, you're causing to kill. An animal has to be killed for that. There's so many things, but yeah, but so I love what you said though. What'd you say? It was ridiculous.
I said respectfully, it's
Respectful
nonsense.
nonsense. I like that. You can. It is. I wrote an article for Shambhala's son. No, Lion's Roar. It was a Lion's Roar. It actually changed already, and it's on the website and all. This is a pretty short one. It was friends, not food. So I try to bring up the most common reasons or rationalizations that people use using the Dharma to justify. And the hard thing about doing that is that each one is really quite ridiculous, and the others are just as ridiculous. Like, it has nothing to do with the Dharma whether you eat an animal or not. Well, what? It's protection of sentient beings. I mean, it's everywhere. Compassion for all life. For if you can feel pain, don't harm this creature. Don't do it. I mean, what else could be clearer than that? So, anyways, that's our. The good news is we don't get into a lot of Dharma debates. We got a lot of materials up there. We also have something called Wise or Right Eating, which is written by David Blatt, one of our founders, bringing together all the stuff that you and I have been talking about. I want to read another comment. It's not really a question, but a comment. So, and the heading is Kasho Buddha. So this is to everyone. Because I think this is pretty typical of what a lot of us on the call and a lot of us in DVA, including yourself, have expressed. I had to go into exile for 15 years because I was constantly slandered, vilified, persecuted, and attacked for doing nothing more than quoting the Buddha on the first precept. Buddhists don't want to hear it because they refuse to give up their meat eating addiction. Hear, hear. You know, and it's hard. So you're talking about this, about the pressure. Even though nobody may say to you, "Okay, you gave one Dharma talk," they was stretching it, Stephanie. We're pretty confident you're not going to be giving another talk like that. And the people in the Sangha, like I said, I've lost people, and now I know I tone down my talk quite a bit, and I just tell them that it doesn't, you know, wherever you are, you're welcome to come to our Sangha, and I try to lead by example. And a lot of people have come into DVA, and I'm always surprised when they do have changed to vegan and all. And sometimes I think that's it. Public example is really important. People don't know where we're coming from if they don't know that you're vegan and how important this is to your practice, your heartfelt practice. But so you have to say that, and it's real. It's amazing how many teachers are I don't want to say intimidated. Let's say deterred from self-identifying as vegan or even vegetarian. Sometimes that's helpful. You know, you're at a center, and of course there's still work to be done when one is vegetarian. But that's the process that I went through. Yeah, and so that's important. And maybe for some Dharma teachers in the West and maybe elsewhere, if the food served at the center where you're giving a Dharma talk or teaching a retreat is not at least at the minimum level where you're comfortable. So if you're vegan food, vegetarian, at least vegetarian food, if not vegan food, to really insist on that. Not only that you be served that meal in the back. So this happens at some of the centers, some of the Asian American centers in the United States, so that the teachers will be served meals that comport with their ethical standards, but then everyone else is served stuff that does not. So asking teachers to say, look, you know, if I'm going to be here for a week teaching, at a minimum, you should not be serving. Is this okay? This is my wish. The centers would probably do that. This is just another way of starting conversations, to do it respectfully and not in a demanding way. And I say, anyways, I've been talking a lot. What do you think?
No, I was just going to say, I just wanted to, and I know we're probably over time, but I just wanted to add this because this has been so important to me as a teacher. This is part of my practice, of course, is what I eat and how the choices I make in my life around what I wear and things like that. But also, this is a practice for me as a teacher of constantly looking, am I coming from a place of heart or am I coming from a place of ego? And when I get caught up in, oh gosh, they won't like me, they won't come back, that's a place to check in.
Mhm.
That's a place to connect with, to have compassion for, because we all want to be liked. But I think in order to teach this, in order to include the fact of carnism and the path of compassion toward all sentient beings, to really make that part of our teaching, Bob, I think teachers have to look at how much am I being swayed by ego, wanting to be liked, etc. And where am I following my heart? So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's a constant place of discernment for me.
Yeah.
Because there have been times where I've stopped from saying something, and it's because of that fear and they won't like me, you know. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
and as we practice Dharma, we realize that's not a great place to come from. That's actually part of suffering. So be true to your heart, be true to your authenticity. And So my hope, and maybe that's, I'm just speaking to other teachers that are already living a vegan lifestyle, to, to let's support each other and not getting caught in those ego traps of,
Hmm.
like you said, some people went away from your sangha. Now I want to be respectful to everybody, but this is part of living a compassionate life. And this is also serious timing about our planet. And we didn't even talk today. I mean, we could have a whole nother hour conversation about the devastation of our planet from the animal agriculture. I mean, we didn't talk about that. And that's
Yeah.
horrific, So,
Yeah,
so
well, and health also. I mean, we haven't even. But as you mentioned, we are coming to the end. So I just want to say a few things. First of all, I am so grateful for you and for sharing hour plus a few more minutes with you today. This is great. We'll definitely have you back again, and thank you for being a part of our U.S. Centers project. Your honor letter with Tara Brock and Jensuma Tenzin Palmo and Banti Sati, who's been on our board for a long time. He's a Sri Lankan American monk, one of the few Theravadan vegan monks in the world, teaches internationally, etc., etc. And also our video. We have a video which Carrie, as our director of U.S. Centers Project, sends to all the centers that she engages with. We're trying to engage with all the centers, and there are several thousand. So it's going to take us a while and help. So anybody wants to volunteer, and we're a nonprofit, so that means we don't sell goods and services. So if anyone is able to, and when you are to donate money, we make it easy on Facebook, but also on the website. We have we use PayPal. And all, and we make it easy for you. This is the way we are able to get to Buddhists and Buddhist institutions to be a voice for animals. We can't do this without your support. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for doing this. It's great. We haven't talked I mean, I think we had
yeah.
shorter conversation. This was really good, and I really appreciate everything you're doing. And please listen to Stephanie's Dharma talk on compassion for animals, to be vegan, and we have the link all over the chat here, and we'll also have it. It's also on the site where you signed up, and I think that's probably good enough. Any other way that they could find it? If they
You're welcome to come to our website, which is atlinsight.org, atlinsight.org. So, yep.
Great. All right.
Thank
So,
you so much, Bob. This was a delightful conversation. Thank you. I
from
feel
you also.
re-inspired.
Yeah, and you know what? This is the theme of a lot of the is inspiration. People are talking about volunteering, about helping us out in other ways because they were inspired by what you said and stood for tonight. So today, so thank you very much. So it's like 10:08 now in California, and the reason we don't have a lot of our Asian buddies there and our staff and our projects out there is because in Vietnam and Thailand now it's after midnight, and in China it's 2 in the morning in some of the places in China. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Stephanie, deep appreciation, a lot of gratitude for you. Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Charles. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Take care. Bye, Steph.